Well, thank you, Hazzan Shulamit, and welcome everyone. I'm Michael Saxe-Taller, your Executive Director, and it is my pleasure to get to welcome more than 100 of you to our most unusual annual community meeting in the history of Kehilla. And one of the things I've learned in my 5 years is that Kehilla folks are flexible and able to move and change on the fly. So I appreciate all your flexibility as Zoom decided to throw a hurdle in front of us at the last moment to having our community meeting, but we would not allow them to deter us. So way to go, Kehilla. I suspect we will have many more people joining us as the minutes go on and we catch up to all the people who haven't quite gotten the message yet. But I am broadcasting to you tonight from my son Sam's room. So welcome to my home, and it is nice to be in everyone's home with you. As I said, I think this is an important meeting we're having. It's an important time for our community, and this meeting is an important opportunity for us to get connected and get to know kind of where we stand as a synagogue. We have met at ones of us in different places online over these last couple months, but we've not had a time when everyone was invited centrally to come, and so that's what tonight is. What I'll tell you is our goal is to end by around 8:45. The evening will have a number of pieces to it. We'll be talking about the past year, current initiatives, effects from COVID on the current situation, on our budget and our finances going forward. And we'll also have a couple of opportunities where everybody will get a chance to meet with some other folks in breakout rooms and get a chance to make some real connection. We understand that in this period of time, we're only going to get to share a certain amount of information, and it's by no means all of what needs to be discussed in our community. So there will be many other opportunities. One thing I will encourage you to do is if you have questions or comments, you can stick them in the chat, and we will keep track of them, and we will find a way to communicate back and answer some of those questions as we go, because as we go tonight, we will not actually be taking formal questions, but we will, please do put them in there and we will pay attention to them. I want to just say a couple things by way of Zoom housekeeping. I imagine, at least for some of you, this may be your first time on Zoom. Others of you may be experts by now, but just a couple of tips. Firstly, it looks like most folks have figured out how to change your name, but we'd love to know the full name of whoever is watching from your site, from your particular computer. You can go into the participant section, find your name, and kind of go to the right and click on more and click change name. That's how you change your name. You'll notice that you're on mute, and we're going to have folks on mute except when they're designated to talk, or when we send you to breakout rooms, you'll get to talk. We're keeping it otherwise folks muted because we have over 110 people on this call, and it would be chaos if we didn't. But fortunately, we at Kehilla have a way of showing our agreement or pleasure, and so I think this is a great time for us to use the Kehilla twinkle through the evening as your way of conveying that you're along with what has been said. You have a couple of two options for how to watch the screen. You can, on the upper right hand side of the computer, you can click on speaker view, and that will put the person who's talking, like for instance right now me, as the full picture on your slide. Or you can click gallery view and get a look at people, and then if you click the arrows on the right or left side of the page, you can get a look at all of the people who come to join you here at this evening's event. And if you want to put something in the chat, you go to the bottom, and right there in the middle it says chat. You click on chat and you put something, and then you also can go click on chat and read what other people have placed in the chat room. Last word is that this is an unusual way to have a community meeting. So I would invite you to take care of yourself as needed. You can always click your video off, and if you need to go for a bio break or stand up and move around, do whatever you need to do. Take care of yourselves. There will be one 5-minute break in the middle when you will get a chance to step away from the screen. So that's the housekeeping, and we're going to start with an opportunity for you just to get connected and meet or say hello to a couple of other folks in the community. We're going to send you off into breakout rooms. We're going to send you automatically, and you will get 8 minutes, and then you will be returned automatically. So no worries, this is a free ride. And while you're there, I'd encourage you to introduce yourself, and you can share one thing that's been going well in your life during this period. and if you want to share one thing that's been challenging about this period of time. And we all bet. So if you haven't had a chance to do it yet, you really should click the button, the arrow buttons that are on the sides of the screen, and take a look at all the other people who are there and see what a beautiful looking community we have here. So what I want to do before we get going with the next piece, I want to start by having a chance to acknowledge the staff, because I think that you all are well aware that what a lot of what Kehilla does is fueled by the staff who support it, who support all the incredible work that you do. And even the more so in these last couple of months, the staff has gone above and beyond to make it possible for us to continue moving and growing as a community. So I wanted to take a moment right off the top to acknowledge the staff. And so you're going to see, you've seen Hazzan Shulamit, you're going to be seeing Rabbi Dev in a few minutes. But I want to point out some of the other folks. The first one I want to introduce is our newest staff member, because we all know that our beloved Maya Joshua is moving on to the next step of her life, but Elle Aviv Newton is our new program and communications manager. So let's welcome her.
Hello, everybody.
And she looks forward to meeting all of you. Then I want to introduce Dee Ward, our office administrator and building manager. There you go, Dee. And Rabbi Gray Merseth, who directs our youth program director. And then Natalie Boskin, who is the youth programs coordinator. Ooh, she should pop up here.
Oh, funny, I actually can't spotlight my own video.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
She's doing a bunch of tech work behind, so she's waving at you. Then we also have Ruthie Levin, our People of Color organizer. Oh, there's Natalie.
Natalie.
Natalie. And let's get Ruthie up.
Hey, everyone. Thank you.
Ruthie. It's the one on the right is Ruthie. And then there's two staff members who are not on our call today, which is Molly Malamed, our bookkeeper, and Fred Williamson, our custodian. And then I just want to point out our two other rabbis, Rabbi David Cooper, who is actually going through a transition of his own from active emeritus rabbi to emeritus rabbi. So you may see him a little less than you have, but Rabbi David Cooper. There's Rabbi David. And then also Rabbi Bert Jacobson, our founding rabbi. Bert, and there's Rabbi Bert. So a good twinkle to the whole staff. Thank you for all your good work. So for those who've been to those who've been to community meetings in the past 5 years, you know that we always start with a review of the year. And the thing is, you might think at this point that there was not any year before this crazy pandemic started. Or you might think that once the pandemic started, there really wasn't any Kehilla life happening. And neither of those are true. So we want to take an opportunity to recognize some of the highlights from our past year. And that means starting from the last time we met back in May of 2019. So from there until right now, we want to get some of the highlights of our year. And the way we're going to do this is we want to invite you to click on the chat and put in the names of the different highlights that have happened over this past year. And our two board of directors co-chairs, Catherine Lyons and Karen Cohen, will read some of those over the next few minutes. Okay, so go ahead and go to the chat.
Simchat Torah with our klezmer band.
High holidays.
Leadership retreat rocked.
Brilliant high holiday services.
Building improvements, clean sanctuary, internet, lobby sprucing.
Leadership retreat.
Immigration and sanctuary work.
My son's bar mitzvah. The first virtual bar mitzvah.
Jews on Ohlone land.
Craft fair. Kehilla sings.
Kehilla sings. Meditation.
People of Color Hanukkah.
Affinity Group, and Air Conditioning. Homeless Committee.
Tikkun Nefesh Workshop on Yom Kippur.
700 Benches is flourishing.
Economic
Passover
justice.
Online.
Homeless Action.
Cemetery.
So many bar and bat mitzvahs.
Cleaning the Rafters.
Virtual Passover Seder.
Loving Send-Off for Joseph.
Hiring Ruthie Levin as People of Color organizer and activities of the Belonging and Allyship Racial Justice Initiative.
Rabbi Haya's healing service last week.
Babies, we welcome and named a number of them.
Second day Rosh Hashanah healing service with Rabbi Haya and Eve.
Studying for my adult bar mitzvah, even though it didn't happen because of the pandemic.
Refugee Immigrant Sanctuary Training.
Virtual Tahara with Kehilla School.
Saying Kaddish for my mom in the sanctuary right as shelter in place was starting with my son just home from college.
We have a guest in our sanctuary space.
West Bank Report Back with Rabbi David, Jim Haber, and Becca.
Chevra Kadisha adapting to COVID.
Meditations with Rabbi Dev twice a week.
Art shows, beautiful.
So I'm gonna jump in here. Please feel free to stick in some, continue to put them in. You can never say that Kehilla is a sleepy place. So those are great to hear. And I want to note that we had many things happen through the year, and then we continued, even once the shutdown came into place, to continue to do important programming and work. And that, as you know, we had to shut down the facility in the middle of March because of the guidelines set forth by the Alameda County Health Department. And we have continued to follow those, which means that our offices are closed and all of our programming is currently online. We will continue to do that as long as both it is required by the county health department and as long as we deem it in the best interest of the health and safety of our community. And I want to make a shout out right now to Ori Tzvili, who is a member of our board of directors, but also is works for the Contra Costa Public Health Department. And from the very earliest issues and questions that came up about how to respond to this virus, Ori has been guiding us and advising us all the way through and will continue to do so moving forward. So just shout out to Ori for his good work. And now what we want to do is take a moment to have a few of our leadership get to share some of the most important work that has happened in our social justice and social action work. That work that was happening throughout the year and that has continued through this period of the pandemic. And so we're going to have a set of leaders who are going to share for briefly a few highlights of their work. So we're going to start off with the Immigration Committee with Julie Litwin, Penny Rosenwasser, and Lily Shidlovsky.
Do we just?
Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, I'm Julie from the Immigration Committee. Penny, can you share our exciting news from the Sanctuary Task Force?
Yes, as you just shared in the chat, Julie, after years of preparing to shelter someone seeking sanctuary for deportation, we now actually have our first Kehilla guest, Luis Alberto, who was just released from ICE detention because he's at high risk for COVID-19. He's with us briefly sheltering in place in our new guest suite in Kehilla that was formerly the area known as Miriam's Well, but it's now expanded with a new bathroom and shower. It took lawyers, bond money, and immigrant justice groups to free him from ICE and get him to Kehilla. And there's a fantastic group of mostly Kehilla volunteers who are safely assisting him. And Luis Alberto told us, "I'm so happy to be here. You have treated me very well."
Wow. Lily, what's going on with our hosting and accompaniment program during the pandemic?
Well, we've been very busy assisting the asylum seekers and refugees who we've accompanied who are in crisis due to the pandemic. And thankfully, everyone is healthy so far, but many have lost employment and many are struggling financially. We've been able to connect people to resources, assist them to access emergency funds, and have shared information about health and safety. There are several individuals who are living with host families in our congregation, and the hosts have been extremely gracious in adapting to living 24/7 with the sometimes traumatized immigrants who they're assisting during the pandemic. We've been working to give emotional support both to hosts and guests. We're also trying to connect those who've lost employment with our friends and neighbors who need help with small home construction projects and yard work.
That's amazing. I think our time's up, but there's some links in the chat if you'd like to learn more about the Immigration Committee or to get involved. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Immigration Committee. Next up is the Economic Justice Committee, Myrna Schwartz.
Hi there. I'm going to tell you about two of our initiatives. The first is the criminal justice work. This is under the brilliant leadership of Richard Spiegelman. We've helped birth the Interfaith Coalition for Justice in our jails, which is aimed at bringing transformative change to Alameda County Santa Rita Jail. With the outbreak of COVID-19, the ICJJ mounted organized appeals to county officials to judiciously reduce the jail population and protect those remaining inside. To the many of you who signed petitions, made calls, and sent postcards, we thank you. The good news is that jail occupancy has been reduced by 1/3. The very bad news is that at least one person was released with symptoms and died soon after. And there's reason to fear this isn't an isolated case. So please follow our Kehilla postings for more updates and suggestions for how you can help. And I'm going to now move on to the EJC's Schools and Community First, that's SCF initiative, which is led energetically by Sue Goldberg and has been linked to the statewide campaigns of Evolve California and Pico California. So a powerful grassroots effort helped to get, to garner a record-setting number of signatures to get SCF on the November ballot.
You got in? Oh, wonderful.
Okay. And now begins the very hard work of getting it passed against what's certain to be powerful opposition. Because if this initiative passes, it will close the Prop 13 corporate tax loophole and restore an estimated $12 billion a year in local revenues for K-8 schools, K-8 schools, community colleges, and needed community services. With COVID, the COVID crisis and frightening economic conditions, deficits looming, the need in our communities couldn't be greater. The EJC hopes to make passage of Schools and Communities First a Kehilla-wide initiative, perhaps kicking off with an event in early September. We need your ideas and energy to make this happen. Please check out the links in the chat box, as well as the contacts, and get in touch. Bye.
Great. Thank you, Myrna. Now let's hear from Talia Husbands-Hankin about our homeless action. Talia.
Hi everyone, my name is Homeless Action Committee at Kehilla that we are very excited about. Right now, while we are all sheltering in place in our homes, staying safe, there are thousands of people living unsheltered in encampments, in vehicles, and on the streets of Oakland. 70% of those people are Black. This is an extreme human right to support, especially during COVID, because people have much less access to their basic needs. So the Homeless Action Committee is fundraising through Love and Justice in the Streets. You can go to the website loveandjusticeinthestreets.com to make a donation or to purchase tents, blankets, and other supplies for people that will be distributed immediately to people in the streets. The other ways to get involved right now is to, if you're a member of REI, to donate your dividends so that we can purchase tents. We're pooling, posted in the chat for REI dividends. Basically just fill you, and then you forward it to Devorah, and then we will collect it. We've already purchased multiple tents. Third way to critical human rights and civil rights issue that's going on in our city, and we invite you to step in and to join us. Our next meeting is Wednesday, May 20th at 4:45 p.m. And if you want to be a part of our group, you can email Sue Greenwald, and we're going to put this information in the chat. And I really hope that everyone will step up and find some way to be involved with this critical issue. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Talia. Please do put the stuff in the chat. We caught most of what you said, but there was a couple pieces that broke up. So let's make sure that information makes it into the chat. Next up, we will have Bessie Citron from the Working Class Low Income Group.
I am speaking as the current co-chair of the Working Class Low Income Group, known affectionately as WICLIG. Our group formed a few years ago to address some needs felt by many of us in our community, to share with others our experiences around class dynamics, also to be a focused presence in Kehilla, working to raise awareness regarding the dominance of middle-class culture and expectations, while increasing awareness and inclusivity of the diversity of our economic realities. As a community, Kehilla has confronted many cultural assumptions and worked to affect our greater consciousness and behavior, yet class and income issues have remained largely hidden. Some of us have struggled long to be heard around the class issues in our community. We want to thank the board, and especially the chairs, Karen C. and Catherine L., for listening deeply and beginning to implement thoughtful changes to the due structure as are now being shared. We welcome new folks to WICLIG. If what I've said here interests you, I encourage you to join us. On the website, in the drop-down menu under ACT, we list our description. We're a group of working class and low-income people who come together to share and support each other in our experiences of difficult class dynamics in Kehilla and or the Jewish community in general, as well as in our everyday lives. We work to raise awareness towards changing the class structure at Kehilla through discussion and actions. And finally, please note the links on the chat. We encourage you all to watch the excellent video about Jews and class that is presented by Eli, titled From the Back of the Room, the Jewish Working Class. It's linked on the chat. Also, please note, you will find on the chat the contact information if you are interested in joining our group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bessie. And finally, I will invite Ruthie Levin to talk about the Belonging and Allyship Racial Justice Initiative.
Since March 17th, we've all found it difficult to work from home, sequestered from and in protection from COVID-19. We recently learned that Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old young man, had been killed almost 3 months ago by known assailants. They were only just arrested for the witness, for They were only just arrested, and only because it was witnessed and a taped crime. On May 3rd, a 28-year-old transgender woman named Nina Pop was found stabbed to death in her apartment, the probable victim of an act of hate. Yesterday, I commented to another white woman I know that I'm worried about the higher amount of African Americans dying of COVID-19. She said that it wasn't true, that actually more white people are dying of the virus than Blacks. And she started giving me statistics based on total populations. And I said to her, this isn't a competition. As we know, some days sheltered in place are better than others. And I just want you all to know that the feelings you're having are justified and real. Kehillas' racial justice team is exploring the possibility of having Yavila McCoy from Dimensions Education Consulting come and do anti-racism trainings for white folks at Kehilla, and also to give support to people of color at Kehilla. As a part of our goal of decentering whiteness and helping Kehilla to become a more welcoming home for POC. And I also would like to mention that there are various affinity groups that are continuing to meet. And if you are new to Kehilla and you want to find out more about affinity groups, please reach out to us. You can reach out to me, Ruthie@kehilla.org.
Thank you, Ruthie. Just a reminder that each one of these groups has put information in the chat. Go ahead and you'll need to copy it and paste it someplace else, because at the end of the program, the chat, we will take a copy of the chat and we will compile all of the links that people have into one place, but I'd encourage you to go ahead and copy and paste them into some other document of yours. So thank you, all of you who spoke. What I'd like to do right now is turn this over to Rabbi Dev.
Hi, everyone. I just want to take a minute to just take in what Ruthie shared and what all the other folks, Bessie and Talia and Julie and Myrna and Lily, and I think I'm probably missing somebody, but all of the sharing and one of the most moving things for me being part of this community is just being able to be close to the incredible work that everybody does, and to get to be part of it in some way by sharing community and sometimes in deeper ways. But really, thank you so much, Ruthie, for that sharing. And I want to just take a couple of breaths to grieve and to honor the losses and the ways that this pandemic is disproportionately impacting people of color and low income and poor people. So what I'm tasked with tonight is to share our kind of overall approach to how we're going to operate as a spiritual community in the pandemic. And as Michael mentioned, we've been extraordinarily blessed, not only to have Ori Tzvieli on our board, but also to have our board co-chairs, Catherine Lyons and Karen Cohn, both coming from public health backgrounds, as well as a number of other members who are public health professionals. And so we have had access to, I think, some of the best information, the clearest thinking, the deepest foresight in helping us to figure out how we're going to manage this for our community. I'm just unpinning the spotlight for me so I'm not staring at myself. Okay, now I can see you. So I think many of you may have already heard that we've made a decision to not try to do high holidays in person. I know that that is a tremendous loss for us as a community and for many of us individually. I want to explain a little bit the thinking behind it, as well as the other things that we're going to do and not do and how we're thinking about them. But I wanted to start by saying that about high holidays in case it's news, or in case you haven't had a chance to really hear about that or process it. I know that that's a big deal, and not everybody has made that call yet, but I'll tell you why we have. We're watching things, we watch things close down, and now we're watching things open up little by little. Those decisions about opening up and closing down are sort of calculated risk decisions on a macro level. So what we've heard from Ori and from other public health folks is that the difficulty economically and psychologically and socially of shutting down whole states, whole economies, starts to create harm that's comparable to the harm of increasing the numbers of infections and illness from COVID. And on a macro level, that's true. So the policy decisions are to open up a little bit, try to track things very carefully, and as they see the numbers of infections and illness and hospitalizations rise, will probably close down. And then as that comes down again, we'll open up a little, and then we'll close down a little, and we'll open up a little, and we'll close down a little. And that will continue to happen until there's a vaccine or some other way to stop the virus from spreading. And those processes require tremendous amounts of testing and tracing and the capacity to isolate people who are ill. Those are important things to do on the macro level for our society, but we've had to think about what is important to do on the level of our community, and what risks does it make sense to take for our community. So we're clear that we are, for the most part, able to work, and we're able to gather in this way. We're able to do much of what we do in this kind of truncated way. And we don't have the same pressure to open up Kehilla to in-person gatherings. And I want to just share that Bracha Stone said the other day, we're not closed. Our building is closed, but our community is open. And I really like that way of thinking about it. Our building is closed, but our community is open. And we're open in this way. And there are a couple of things in particular about the way we gather that make our gatherings more high risk than some other kinds of gatherings. The first thing is that we gather for a pretty long time. So usually our services are 2 hours or 3 hours or something like that. And staying in a single room for a long period of time is much higher risk, even with distancing, than, say, being in a grocery store line that's moving and that you're in for 10 or 15 minutes. It's much more risky to be in the same room for 2 or 3 hours. Secondly, a lot of what we do is singing, and singing is a way of forcing air around the room that's much more, that spreads respiratory droplets at a much higher rate and much farther than talking does, or just being in a room without talking, or being on a grocery line without talking. So the way that we come together is a particularly high risk way of gathering. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. And when we're making decisions about things like services in schools and school and bar and bat mitzvahs, we're trying to think about the underlying risk factors in addition to the county and state regulations. So the county and state regulations are sort of a minimum level of care that we're taking, but we may not choose to do everything that the regulations and the orders allow us to do. We may choose not to do things that we would be allowed to do because we are clear that those things involve a higher risk than it makes sense for us to take. So some of the places where it's most impactful are life cycle events, not being able to have families gather. And I feel like those are places where we felt the most impact so far. People have not been able to gather for Shiva. People have not been able to gather for burial with more than 10 people at the cemetery. People have not been able to gather in person for bar and bat mitzvahs. And a lot of families are experiencing tremendous loss around those anticipated and unanticipated life cycles. So the places where we're thinking we will try to maybe push to do things in small gatherings if they feel safe or around those kinds of things, to have maybe in the same way that we've gathered a very small number of people with social distancing at a cemetery for a burial. We might be able to do that with a family that's housed together for a bar bat mitzvah. We're still exploring that. Rabbi Gray has done a phenomenal job, along with Natalie and all the teachers of Kehilla School, to keep Kehilla School going. The students at Kehilla School are practicing gratitude every Thursday in ways that are unbelievable, doing all kinds of other learning online that's really beautiful. As soon as we're going to celebrate the sixth graders' graduation this Thursday, and once Rabbi Gray has a chance to breathe and maybe sleep a little bit, we'll start envisioning what Kehilla School will look like online in the fall. You may have heard today that the California State University system just announced that they are not going to open up for in-person classes in the fall. So I think we're actually likely to see a lot more institutions making the decision to stay online into the fall and until it's safe to gather. So a few people on the staff have a weekly chat with Ori Tzvieli just to check in and see what's happening in the public health environment, what the Bay Area counties are thinking and doing and expecting. That's always informing our thinking week by week. And we will keep you informed as best we can. We're excited to use new ways that are available to us online to connect. We've heard, especially from people who live far away and people who have disabilities that keep them at home, that Kehilla has never been more accessible than it is now. And we're taking that to heart, that when things change, we want to stay as accessible as we've become to the greatest number of people. And we really welcome your thoughts and ideas about what works for you and how we can continue to be a beautiful, interconnected spiritual community during this pandemic. And I want to give one last shout out, and that's to the Chevra Kadisha, which immediately started to figure out how to offer the services that they offer to people in our community who die, and how to do that. Then they created a whole ritual of online virtual tahara, the ritual washing of people's bodies. And so we have an incredible Chevra Kadisha that is prepared to continue to do as much as possible the holy work of accompanying us through the end of life. So thank you all for sticking with us and for diving into these new forms of connecting. And we'll go together into the future.
Catherine, over to you.
So good evening, everybody. Really great to see everybody. We're going to be sending you again into breakout rooms. It may be smooth, it may be bumpy, but you will all get into a breakout room with about 5 people. And the first thing to do would be just to assign a facilitator, a timekeeper. Maybe think now if you're the person who wants to do that, and then also a scribe. And we're going to ask you to take notes. It doesn't have to be fancy notes, just the thoughts that each person shares, and I'll give you a prompt in a moment. And you can do it in any format. Some electronic format would be ideal. You could do it directly into an email and send them to me. We'll put my email in the chat so you have that. You'll have a total of 15 minutes. So what we're suggesting is 2 minutes per person. This gives you a couple of seconds in there to negotiate who's going to be the facilitator, timekeeper. And just remember, as with the last breakout room, the room does close automatically. So you may be in the middle of a thought or a sentence. You can share that later with your group. So what we'd like you to think about and maybe share with people are what opportunities do you see for yourself in this new environment? Thinking about what Rabbi Dev spoke about. So what do you feel like you can gain from it? What do you feel like you could contribute? What would you like to see? Again, moving forward, considering that this environment may be the way it is for the time to come. So how do you envision Kehilla working for you as a spiritual and an activist community? So any of those, just what are your thoughts about this moving forward? So it would be really great to get each person's thoughts on what they would like to say, and then you can pass it on to me I think Natalie put the question in the chat as well as my email. So please do either email it directly to me or whatever works, and then we will compile those. So now I think you're off into breakout rooms.
Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to stretch your legs. These Zoom affairs are a whole different thing. But now what we're about to do is another part of what we regularly do at our annual community meeting, which is I get a chance to talk about the state of the congregation. And I'll tell you, back in February, before I went out on an unexpected medical leave for the month of March, I had been preparing to talk about this extraordinary year of growth that was going to continue, and many different ways we were thinking about how to handle that growth. And lo and behold, this whole pandemic and recession hit, and it has shifted the picture of Kehilla going forward. But the thing I want to say to start is that we're going to come through this well, and we're one of the main reasons that we are is because we came into this crisis in really solid shape. That we have grown already this year. We grew from 480 to over 500 households, the largest that Kehilla has ever been. As you could tell by all the avalanche of things written in the chat, we have an extraordinarily active congregation with numerous people taking leadership and in many different interesting, innovative ways. And we also have come into this in a really strong financial position, that we've had 5 straight years of budgets with surpluses. And what it has meant is that when the crisis hit, we started it with over 6 months of operating expenses and reserves, which is a really important thing, and based on the hard work of a lot of our leaders to get to that. But it meant that we have approached this and hit this crisis in strong shape to handle it. As you know, when the pandemic really hit this country, we had to shut down and cancel a number of programs, including our large spring fundraiser. And so the loss of those programs, as well as the loss of our rentals, has meant that this year we had some significant loss of revenue. And we had to make some decisions fairly quickly. And unfortunately, we had to put the hold on and make some decisions in terms of some personnel. And we were unable to, we had been planning we had a development and communications position, which was ably being managed by our own Batya Gelfand, but we did not have the funds to move that into our operating budget for this year, and unfortunately had to eliminate the position. We also, as you know, were far into an assistant rabbi search, and we had to put the rabbi search on hold and put the position on hold until a later date when we will, God willing, have the ability to fund it. But we had to put it on hold for this upcoming year. And thirdly, our beloved head custodian, Joseph Straub, who's been, I think has been running Kehilla since Mount Sinai, the Jews were at Mount Sinai, and he finally retired. Instead of replacing him, we actually are not rehiring for that position until the point comes when we know that we can actually open our building up in a full way. And until then, Fred Williamson, our evening and weekend custodian, has been really ably handling our needs for the building, which are limited at this point. We have also made a decision to put off all building projects for the time being, unless they are projects that have their own source of funding. And so we're also going to hold off on those. But what we do know is, now that we're coming near the end of the fiscal year, is that we will come out better than we had expected. We had a very strong beginning of the year, and we expect that we will come out with a deficit, but it will be a small deficit. And we appreciate greatly the enormous generosity that so many of you have provided in your time and your efforts to get us to this point. And we particularly thank all of those who've made donations recently to assist our congregants and other folks that we work with. And I would invite you, if you still feel moved to do so, to make a contribution to our Member Hardship Fund, which provides money for folks who are unable to actually fulfill their membership pledges. And that website, that link has just been put in the chat by Natalie. We did get a piece of news, good news, that's going to help us through this transition, which is that we recently received a $150,000 loan, a payroll protection program loan, which came through the National CARES Act, we received it, and with our hope is that some or all of it will end up being forgiven in the end, which will be helpful, because we applied for this loan to put us in a better position for the coming year. Now, we're well aware that there are a couple of ethical concerns about this loan. And we have things we need to work out to think about how to use it. And because we are aware that for the first time in this country, we have been, as a religious institution, provided money from the federal government. And that raises questions, as well as we are mindful that we are in a privileged position that allowed us to apply for and receive this loan when some other institutions didn't have the ability to do that. And so we're aware of those, and the board will be looking into those issues and responding to them in the near future, and we will keep you up to date and invite any of your thoughts if you want to contact me and send them. We'd love to hear what your thinking is on those issues. What I want to do right now is invite Lisa Corwin, who is a member of our board of directors, as well as the chair of our generosity committee, to share a little bit about the survey that we sent out to the congregation recently. Lisa?
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad we're gathering together tonight. And as Michael said, I'm a member of the board. And I wanted to just start by being able to say that we understand how vulnerable folks are feeling right now, 9 weeks into the COVID shelter-in-place reality. And that is actually why we decided to disseminate a survey to the membership to get a sense of how our community is being financially impacted by the pandemic. So I wanted to give you a high-level overview on the survey results. And if all is going well, those survey results are going to show up on the screen in like a minute. Oh, it's magical. Okay. So basically, very high level, the survey is still open. So we'll be doing a lot deeper dive soon, but about a little over 100 folks have completed the survey so far. And we've gotten a sense that basically from those that have completed the survey that the majority, though by no means all, appear to be holding steady financially and are anticipating contributing either the same amount toward dues and donations next year. And at the same time, we've heard that others aren't faring as well, and that they aren't sure if they'll be able to pay some or any of their costs next year. And there are still others who just don't know yet where things are at. The good news is that some members will be able to contribute a bit more to help cover costs. And so in looking at all of that, you know, as Michael said, we're hoping to hold steady. And so far the numbers are looking good, and we would welcome you taking more time. Any of you haven't yet had a chance to complete the survey, there's a link in the chat box to the survey. And if you don't have access to that, feel free afterwards to look at the meeting invitation you got. It's in there as well. And it'll give us a chance to, the more folks that respond, the better sense we have of how well our community is doing and what that means for Kehilla as well going forward. So thanks so much. Michael, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa.
You bet.
What I want to do now is talk for a few minutes about where we're going. That we know looks like we will come through this current fiscal year, which ends last day of June, with a small deficit. But now we are looking ahead to next year, and this is where it gets interesting. That any of you that are connected to nonprofits, whether you work for them or you're on the board, or all institutions right now are trying to figure out how to figure out how the next year is going to go, because so many things are not known about the course of the pandemic. So there are things that we know and there are things that we don't know. And so we are working, I can assure you that I have been working very closely with the board and with the finance committee to track our position and to start imagining our next year. And I want to actually take a quick moment to make another shout out, which is to Ruth Atkin, who's our treasurer and co-chair of the finance committee, and Michael Myers, who's the other co-chair of the finance committee, and then the whole finance committee, who have been working very hard with me to imagine scenarios for budgets for next year. And what we know is this, and it's similar to what I said about where we stand for this fiscal year, which is that we're going to come through this okay. How we're going to come through it, exactly how, we don't really know. All of the details of what the path will be. What we know is that we come in a solid financial position, and we have an extraordinary group of people, you and many hundreds of others who care so much about Kehilla. We're going to make sure that Kehilla will do well. And we also have hundreds of people out in the community who care about Kehilla and who will support Kehilla as we move forward. So I think in that we know that we're going to be solid, and come several years from now, even if this continues, if the economic troubles continue, we will still come out fine in the end. It doesn't mean that things won't be challenging. But what I wanted to say is that what we've done, we've set out some different possible scenarios, and the board will soon be voting on a budget. And in that budget, we know that our top priority is our staff. Over 70% of our expenses are personnel expenses, and that is essential to us. It's clear priority number one for the board is to be able to maintain current staff at current funding level. That's the number one goal and priority. There are though some things we don't yet know about, which is what will be the extent of the reduction overall in our dues, in our tuition, and in our donations. Now, from the first run of our survey, there's some optimism that we may be able to maintain levels close to what we've had in the past, but we're also aware that people are suffering in a real way. There are members of our congregation who've lost income, who've lost their jobs, who've had their savings hit. And so we know that people will be challenged, and we know that people care about Kehilla and will give as generously as they can, but it's also a reality that we expect that some people will not be able to give as they did in the past. So those are things that we will be monitoring and adjusting to as we see. We also know that we will not be our rentals for this upcoming year will take a hit, there's no question. And we also know that our income and expenses from high holidays are going to go down dramatically. Our hope is, as Rabbi Dev said, that we'll be able to do a program that people will, the hundreds and hundreds of non-members who generally come to us for high holidays will still come and pay for the tickets that they're going to be, the tickets that will allow them to be part of our services. So our hope is that we will not lose very much income from that. But again, there's a set of things that we don't know yet. Therefore, we're going to take on these challenging financial times with our eyes wide open. And every month, the board of directors will be taking a look at the financials and evaluating where we are and making decisions. And as we go forth, and what I can tell you that I and the board leadership are committed to is transparency with you. That we can't tell you right now how it's all going to work. We have faith that we will work through it and work it out, and we will communicate with you about it. So you will be well informed of where we stand. And if you have any needs for information or have questions, please come to me and I will be happy to respond to them and answer them. So right now I want to turn it over to Karen, who's going to talk some about membership dues and a new interesting initiative. You're muted, Karen.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you for being here so late into the night, keeping your attention going. With the recent survey results that Lisa just shared, the board's proposing a different membership renewal process this year, keeping it really simple, asking one question, just like on the survey: can you pledge the same amount for dues as last year, or less or more? And that's because we all share in Kehillas financial sustainability. And like Michael said, we want to create transparency about our expenses, but also reinforce our values. So you read our website, we're a radically inclusive Jewish spiritual home for politically progressive people of all ages, identities, and family constellations. So now I want to consciously add for people of all incomes and class backgrounds to the list of who belongs. And to repeat the message in the survey, we're asking all of us to put our strength together to deal with this time of hardship and for each to support the community according to our means. Earlier in Kol Kehilla, we introduced the concept of sustaining dues. Sustaining dues is a calculation that some congregations use to show how much it costs to run their organization per member household. Also, you can say the average dues across all households that would be needed to sustain the budget. Kehilla's sustaining dues amount is $2,300. We're very sensitive to the fact that not everybody can pledge at that amount. Many cannot, particularly in this time of crisis and uncertainty. So in addition to that basic question, can you pledge the same amount for dues as last year, or less, or more? At renewal time, please consider the following. If your past giving level has been less than the sustaining dues amount, it would be great if you can pledge that same amount again. And if you can't, it's fine to pledge what you can afford. If your past giving level has been close to the sustaining dues amount and you can stretch to pledge $2,300, please do so if you can. And if your past giving level has been greater than at $2,300 or greater, it would be wonderful if you're able to pledge that amount again or an increased amount in the coming year. So in this way, we want to, and we will, collectively support Kehilla stability in this time of financial downturn. This concept of sustaining dues is a work in progress, and we want to have many community conversations about this concept in the coming year. So please invite us to your home, your Havurah, your committee, and we would like to talk with you about it. As a reminder, your dues support the backbone of our community, and that is Kehilla's incredible clergy and staff that you know and love. Just what Michael had said. They hold us together, they inspire us, they make it possible for our community to make such an invaluable difference in the world. Lastly, a gigantic and heartfelt thanks to all of you. Because of your extraordinary commitment and generosity, we are a very vital and vibrant community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We just have a couple of more things we want to say, but this next thing I want to say, I think is really important, which is that this community has for years thrived because of incredibly passionate, committed congregational members who have volunteered their time to be leaders. And many of you have done that and do that in lots of ways. I want to give now a special thank you to the board that they have stepped up in a big way. I am personally so deeply grateful because at a time where I had to take a month out for an unexpected medical leave, Karen and Catherine and the rest of the board stepped up, and they gave their all, and they did so along with the staff to not just hold things together, but to keep things going strongly. So I say a deep thank you to Catherine, Karen, and Lisa, who you've already seen tonight, but also Ruth Atkin, Shoshana Finicom. Wave when I say your name, if you would. Shoshana Finicom, Barbara Peterson, Ali Cannon, Ori Tzvili, and Stephanie Hochman. Thank you. Karen, Catherine, to you.
And we're really thrilled that we actually have a new board member, Rachel Riley. We were able to add a board member because of the departure of another member before the end of her term. And just a couple of words about Rachel. She jokes, although I don't think it's a joke, that she follows Dev everywhere, starting at Shara Zahav, where she was a student of Dev's as an adult B'nai Mitzvah student. Rachel and her spouse Emily Newfield, as well as their son Riley, have been members of Kehilla for a few years, and I had the honor of being at Riley's bar mitzvah. And if you have never heard his version of Adon Olam, I hope that it has been preserved somewhere because it was amazing. Anyway, thank you for joining the board, Rachel, and we're really thrilled to have you.
I'm going to thank Barbara, who's just ending her board service, Barbara Peterson. She spent 6 years giving of herself in a genuine way, 3 years as a board co-chair, including one of those years flying solo, one year that I was delighted to share with her. She has been the glue as board members transition on and off of our board, and she consistently has shared her personal warmth and her appreciation of others' contributions. We will miss her presence on the board.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. And again, thank you to all of the board members. Just a couple last announcements before we bring this to a ritual close. As I think you probably know by now, there's a lot still going on at Kehilla, and you can find out about those things by going to the Sukkah B'Makom page on our website, and all information would be listed there. And also know that we will be in touch with you because we have many new opportunities for avodah, which are different than some of the standard ones we did before. And so keep your eyes open you'll be hearing from Elle as we begin to recruit more assistants for this Kehilla in its new incarnation for this upcoming year. And keep your eyes open because there will be more things happening over the summer as we continue to get our legs under us and start and do more Kehilla things. So keep your eyes open. So at this point, we're going to bring this evening to a close. I want to first say thank you myself. I am honored to be able to work for this congregation, not just because it's my mom's congregation, but because it's an extraordinary group of people. And so I am really happy to have been here this evening with all of you and appreciate your commitment and all the gifts you give to the community. With that, let me hand it over to Rabbi Dev and Hazzan Shulamit for some ritual closing to our evening.
So we wanted to close the evening with this practice of counting the Omer together, which is something that I know some of us do now as a regular practice, and for some of us it's a new thing. But what we're counting is the days between the day that we leave Mitzrayim, the day that we enter into freedom. We're counting 49 days from that day of freedom to the day of arriving at Mount Sinai and receiving Torah, which is what happens on the 50th day. And so we're pretty far into the process now. We're just at the end. I'm looking out at the sky getting dark. So we're just at the end of the 34th day and coming into the 33rd day, coming into the 34th day. And each day has a particular spiritual quality. Each week has a spiritual quality. The quality of this week is the quality of splendor, and sometimes we think of it as acceptance. Sometimes we think of it as even submission, a quality of just being with what is. And that has been such a very, very, very important quality to practice with during this time of COVID, this time of uncertainty, this time of mystery. And the day right now is shifting from also a day that has the quality of Hod, of acceptance, so still in the week of Hod, but now moving into the day of Yesod, of foundation. So kind of thinking about inviting in this energy of feeling a strong foundation, feeling rooted and grounded in our capacity to accept what is and to be with what is. And so Hazzan Shulamit, I think, is going to lead us in a musical version of the blessing. And it's a custom to rise for this blessing in body or in spirit. And Shu, I can't see you.
I'm out here on some other page. So I'm going to lead the blessing and the counting call and response style. So we can practice after you hear me. If you want to engage and repeat after me, we can practice putting our virtual sensors out to hear one another's vibrations. Baruch atah Adonai, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ruach haolam, Eloheinu ruach haolam, Asher kidshanu, Asher kidshanu, b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al Sfirat HaOmer, Sfirat HaOmer, Sfirat HaOmer. Hayom, Arba'a Ushloshim Yom.
Shoshim v'arba yom shehem.
There goes Michael. Woo woo. Shehem Arba'a Shavuot v'shisha Yamim LaOmer. You can shout this after me. Today is 34 days, which is 4 weeks and 6 days of the Omer. And here we are together, living into Yesod, Shebahod, the foundational connections that allow us to live into our gratitude, our surrendering to the moment, and to sensing the splendor that persists in this wild and trying world. May it be so.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you staying with us for this long evening, and I wish you a good evening.